Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. I hope you're doing well. Let's start a new subject. Some of Sophomore Rhetoric by Dr. Muhammad Al-Wishi for London College of International. Chapter 2, the Deceiver's Arsenal. Chapter 3, the Voice of Change. Chapter 4, the Digital Battlegrounds. So the contents lists the course's structures. Chapter 1, the hidden power. Chapter 2, the deceiver's arsenal. Chapter 3, the voice of change. Chapter 4, the digital background. The purpose to provide a roadmap of the course, outlining the four main chapters to set expectations for the topic covered. The key elements presented as a bullet point list. It organizes the course into a logical progression from fundamental rhetoric to modern digital applications. The titles suggest a narrative arc, understanding power, recognizing deception, exploring positive change, and a narrative navigating contemporary challenges. Significance helps students anticipate the course's scope from historical roots to current issues, ensuring clarity about the learning journey. Rhetoric, the ancient art of influence in a digital age. Welcome to a journey through one of the humanity's oldest and the most powerful tools, from ancient Greek forms to modern social media platforms. Rhetoric has shaped civilization, started wars, and inspired revolutions. As we explore this ancient art in our digital age, you'll discover not just how to recognize persuasion, but how to master it ethically and effectively. So, welcome to a journey through one of the humanity's oldest and the most powerful tools, from ancient Greek forms to modern social media platforms. Rhetoric has shaped civilizations, started wars, and inspired revolutions. As we explore this ancient art in our digital age, we will discover together not just how to recognize persuasion, but how to master it ethically and effectively. We introduce rhetoric's historical and modern significance, framing the course as a journey to understand and ethically apply persuasion. The key elements uses evocative language to highlight rhetoric impact. For example, shaped civilizations. It emphasizes ethical mastery. Setting a moral tune likely includes a visual, for example, Greek forum or social media icons to bridge past and present. Significance engaged students by positioning rhetoric as both timeless and relevant, motivating them to learn its practical and ethical applications. Let's start with the first one, chapter 1, the hidden power. It states rhetoric surrounds us every day, often invisible yet profoundly influential. In this chapter, we will uncover the foundations of persuasion that have been shaping human interaction for millennia. Understanding these principles is the first step to recognizing when there is being used on you and learning to wield them yourself. So, the purpose of this chapter to introduce some emphasizing rhetoric's subtle presence and the need to understand its fundamental principles. The key elements highlights rhetoric in visibility and influence, using phrases like profoundly influential and for millennia. It sets two goals, recognizing manipulation and mastering persuasion, likely accompanied by this image, illustrating hidden influence, for example, subtle. So, significance of this chapter to frame rhetoric as a pervasive force, engaging vigilance and skill development, setting the stage for deeper exploration. So that empower objectives, recognize, identify rhetoric techniques in everyday communication, defend, protect yourself from manipulative persuasion, to master, learn to ethically influence others through effective communication. The purpose to outline the practical goals of Chapter 1, shifting from theory to actionable skills. Key elements structured as clear list, possibly in boxes or bullets. It emphasizes recognition, defense, and ethical mastery. The focus on ethics differentiates the course from manipulative approaches. Significance of this chapter to provide a clear framework for students, making the chapter's purpose tangible and relevant to daily life. The Invisible Force Shaping Your World, Part 1. Every advertisement you see, every political speech you hear, and every social media post you read is carefully crafted to influence your thoughts and behaviors. Even the absence of certain information, what remains unsaid, can be a powerful rhetoric choice. Includes the quote, rhetoric is the art of persuasion, Aristotle. So the purpose to illustrate rhetoric, uh, uh, omnipresence in media and communication, highlighting strategic omissions as persuasive tools. So the key elements lists specific examples, for example, speeches, posts to ground the content. The Aristotle quote adds historical authority, likely includes a visual of media, for example, and ad or tweet. So the significance to make students aware of rhetoric's subtle influence in everyday context, reinforcing the need to analyze communication critically. The Invisible Force Shaping Your World, Part 2. But rhetoric extends for beyond simple persuasion. It's the architecture, belief systems, the engine driving social and political change, a tool that can manipulate as easily as it can eliminate the framework for how we understand reality itself. Notes rhetoric presence in outrooms, making the marketing, sermons, and scientific papers. So the purpose to broaden the definition of rhetoric, showing its role in shaping beliefs, society, and reality. So the key elements to use bullet points to list rhetoric's rules. Emphasizing its dual potential for manipulation versus illustration or elimination. The examples span diverse fields, showing universality, so significance to encourage students to see rhetoric fingerprints everywhere, deepening their understanding of its scope and impact. So the oracle of Delph's warning. Sophistus. In ancient Greece, as a democracy took its first tentative steps, a new profession emerged. The sophists, these traveling teachers, offered instruction in rhetoric for a fee, promising to teach anyone how to win arguments regardless of truth or merit. This rise coincided with a fundamental shift in how society determined truth. So the purpose to introduce the historical context of rhetoric's rise in democratic Greece, focusing on the sophists' role. The key elements details the sophists' business model and their impact on truth from tradition to persuasion. Likely includes an image of ancient Greece, for example, forum, significance to set up the ethical debate by showing rhetoric's potential for misuse, laying the groundwork for Socrates' critique. The oracle of Delph's warning Socrates. Socrates' stand against deception. Socrates, one of the history's most influential philosophers, recognized the danger in this approach. He challenges the sophists, arguing the rhetoric without ethics with a threat to society itself. His questioning of established rhetoric and the power structures was so threatening that in 399 BCE, he was charged with corrupting the youth and sentenced to death. His final warning resonates through history, rhetoric divorced from truth, and justice becomes a weapon of manipulation rather than a tool of enlightenment. So the purpose highlights Socrates' opposition to unethical rhetoric and its consequences, the key elements, focusing on Socrates' ethical stance and his execution, warning that unethical rhetoric becomes manipulation, likely includes a portrait of Socrates. So the significance to reinforce the course's ethical focus, showing the historical stakes of rhetoric misuse. 2,300 years ago, Aristotle's blueprint. In 350 BCE, Aristotle addressed the growing concerns about rhetoric's potential for misuse by publishing on rhetoric the world's first comprehensive manual for ethical and effective persuasion. This groundbreaking work established the principles that remain foundational to communication theory today. So the purpose to introduce Aristotle's foundational work as a response to sophisticated abuses. So the key elements to highlight on rhetoric as a landmark, emphasizing ethics and effectiveness, likely includes an image of Aristotle or his text So the significance positioning to position Aristotle as a key figure, setting up his three pillars, ethos, pathos, logos, as the course's analytical framework. 2,300 years ago, Aristotle's blueprint, ethos, pathos, logo, intro. Unlike the sophists who taught manipulation techniques, Aristotle viewed rhetoric as a sister to dialectic, logical debate, and ethics. He believed effective persuasion required the speaker to understand human psychology and to respect the audience's capacity for reason. Introduces ethos, pathos, and logos. So the purpose to contrast Aristotle's ethical approach with the sophists and introduces his three persuasive elements. So the key elements emphasizes psychology and audience respect, likely includes a diagram of ethos, pathos, logos, the significance to establish Aristotle's framework as central to the course grounding subsequent analysis. Ethos, speakers, authority, historical evaluation. Before rhetoric, truth was established through divine rights, ancestral wisdom of philosophical authority. The rhetoric revolution, democracy, and the public discourse created a new standard. Modern ethos today, authority comes from expertise, experience, shared values, and perceived authenticity. Authenticity. So the purpose to trace ethos's evaluation from divine authority to modern credibility based on expertise and authenticity. The key elements it uses uses a numbered list to show a historical shifts, like includes a visual contrasting old and new authority, for example, king versus expert. The significance shows ethos relevance across time, emphasizing its role in modern persuasion. Modern ethos. Today's authority comes from expertise, experience, shared values to perceive authenticity without establishing ethos. Even the most or logical argument may be ignored. A speaker's authority building ethos part 1. Credentials, expertise, relevant education, experience, and specialized knowledge, character integrity, demonstrating honesty, fairness, and consistent ethical standards over time. So the purpose to provide practical ways to build ethos, focusing on qualifications and the moral character. The key elements structured as bullet points. It offers actionable advice, likely includes an image of a credible figure, for example, a scientist or a leader. So the significance to equip students with tools to establish their own credibility in communication. The speaker, the authority, building ethos part 2. So he continues, goodwill and the common ground, showing genuine concern for the audience interests and finding shared values. Delivery, presence, confidence speaking, appropriate appearance and command of the communication environment. So the purpose to complete the ethos building list, focusing on audience communication and presenting skills. So the key elements emphasizing relational and performative aspects, like including a visual of speaker engaging an audience. So the significance to rounds out ethos as multi-phased concept, highlighting its practical application. Ethos, the speaker's authority, importance. Without ethos, your message may be dismissed before your audience even considers your argument. This is why credibility attacks ad hominem are so effective. These undermine the foundation upon which all other persuasion must be built. So the purpose to stress ethos' critical role in persuasion and vulnerability to attacks. The key elements explains ad hominem effectiveness likely includes an image of a debate or attack. For example, political cartoon. So the significance reinforces ethos as the foundation of persuasive success, arguing students to protect their credibility. Pathos, the emotional earthquake introduction. While logical appeals to the mind, emotion speaks directly to the heart, and throughout human history, heart has constantly overpowered mind when the two come into conflicts. From ancient Greek tragedies to modern political campaigns, emotional appeals have proven themselves the most powerful persuasive tool um, available. So the purpose to introduce pathos as the dominant persuasive force rooted in emotion. The key elements contrasts heart and the mind. Citing historical examples likely includes an emotional image, for example, a campaign ad. Significance to position pathos as a key focus, highlighting its power and the potential for manipulation. The emotional earthquake science. The science behind emotional and persuasion. Neuroscience has confirmed what rhetoricians have known for millennia. Emotions that drive decision making, MRI. It studies how that people with damage to emotional centers of the brain struggle to make even simple choices despite intact logical reasoning. So the purpose to validate pathos' power with scientific evidence. The key element cites MRI studies to link emotions to decisions, likely includes a brain scan image. Significance to ground pathos to modern science, reinforcing its relevance and impact. Pathos, the emotional earthquake narrative. The narrative advantage, a statistical argument about immigration might be forgotten within hours. But a single compelling story about one's immigrant's journey can change perspectives permanently. This is why anti antidotes often triumph over data in public discourse. The purpose to explain why stories are more persuasive than facts. Key elements to contrast aesthetics and the narratives with an immigration example likely includes an image of a personal story, for example, an immigrant. Significance to highlight pathos, memorability, encouraging students to use stories effectively. Pathos, the emotional earthquake hijacking. Emotional hijacking, when strong emotions are triggered, particularly fear, anger, or pride, the brain's capacity for critical thinking diminishes. This biological response explains why inflammatory rhetoric can override rational through in otherwise reasonable people. The purpose to warn of pathos' manipulative potential through emotional triggers. The key elements to list fear, anger, and pride as key triggers likely includes an image of inflammatory rhetoric, for example, protest. So the significance to alert students to defend against emotional manipulation by recognizing its mechanisms. The emotional earthquake, quote and conclusion. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never, ever forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou. Understanding pathos isn't just about recognizing when others attempt to manipulate your emotions. It's about acknowledging that truly effective communication must agree both heart and mind. The purpose to summarize pathos lasting impact and advocates balanced persuasion. The key elements Angula's quote emphasizes emotional memory. The conclusion calls for the heart-mind balance, likely includes an emotional image. So the significance encourages ethical use of pathos, reinforcing its power and responsibility. Logos, the fortress of logic introduction. Logic forms the structural foundation of any sound argument. When built properly, a logic argument creates an inexorable path from premises to conclusion, making your position seems not just preferable but inevitable. The ancient Greeks recognized two primary forms of logical reasoning: deductive reasoning, moving from general principles to specific conclusions; inductive reasoning, moving from specific observations to general principles. So the purpose to introduce logos as the rational backbone of persuasion, detailing its forms, the key elements to defines deductive general to specific, and inductive specific to general. Reasoning likely includes a logic diagram, so the significance to establish logos as essential for sound arguments, setting up its limitations. Logos, the fortress of logic limitations and elements. While logic might seem like the strongest persuasive appeal, psychological research constantly shows it's often the weakest link against powerful emotional arguments. This creates a trouble vulnerability in public discourse. The most logical position doesn't automatically win. Um, Elements of strong logic appeals, clear, well defined terms without ambiguity. So the purpose to highlight logos, strengths, and vulnerabilities, introducing elements of strong logic, the key elements to acknowledge emotional um, dominance, less a clarity as key, likely includes a logical structure image, so the significance to tempers the expectations for logos, urging students to combine it with ethos and pathos. Chapter 2, The Deceiver's Arsenal Introduction. Throughout history, rhetoric has been weaponized by those seeking power without ethical constraints. In the chapter, we will examine the darker applications of persuasion and the techniques used to manipulate rather than inform. Understanding these deceptive practices is crucial. Not just for academic knowledge, but for self-defense in an information landscape filled with sophisticated manipulation. The purpose to introduce chapter 2, focusing on manipulative rhetoric for awareness and protection, the key elements to emphasize the unethical use of persuasion and the need for defense, likely includes a dark themed image propaganda, significance to shift focus to rhetoric's dangers, preparing students to identify manipulation. Um, Corrected slide text. First one, logical fallacies, errors in reasoning that appear convincing but lead to false conclusions. Propaganda techniques, systematic methods to shape public opinion through emotional manipulation. So the purpose to outline chapters two topics, structuring the exploration of deception, the key elements to number the list for clarity, focusing on fallacies, propaganda, and digital methods. Likely includes an image of manipulation. For example, a misleading ad. Significance provides a clear framework for understanding deceptive techniques. Logical fallacies in the art of the lie. Introduction are errors in reasoning that may sound convincing but lead to false conclusions. They exploit psychological vulnerabilities and cognitive shortcuts, making them particularly effective tools for manipulation. Recognizing these patterns is your first line of defense against deceptive rhetoric. The purpose to introduce logical fallacies as manipulative tools, emphasizing recognition for defense. The key elements to define fallacies and their psychological basis likely includes an image of fluid reasoning, debate, significance, equip students with tools to spot and resist deceptive arguments. The art of lie, logical fallacies, ad hominem, attacking the person instead of addressing their arguments. For example, don't listen to her environmental proposals. She flew on a private jet last year, so she is a hypocrite. Why it works? Undermines ethos, preventing audience from considering the actual arguments. So the purpose to detail the ad hominem fallacy, showing how it distracts from arguments, the key elements to provide a clear example and explanation likely includes an image of personal attack. So the significance helps students to recognize ethos-based manipulation in discourse. The art of lie, logical fallacies, strawman. Mispresenting an opponent's position to make it easier to attack. For example, those who support gun control want to abolish the construction and take all weapons from law-abiding citizens. Why it works? Creates a false dichotomy and emotional reaction while avoiding the actual nuanced argument. So the purpose to describe the strawman fallacy, highlighting its demonstration of arguments. The key elements to include a specific example and the mechanism likely includes an image of this representation, significance to teach students to identify distorted arguments, enhancing critical thinking. The art of the lie, logical fallacies appeal to emotion, manipulating feeling to bypass logical evaluation. For example, think of the children who will suffer if you do not support this legislation. Why it works? Triggers protective instincts and moral impulse that override critical thinking. The key elements to provide an example exploiting moral impulses likely includes an emotional image, for example, children in distress. The purpose to detail how emotional appeals override logic, significance alerts students to pathos-based manipulation, urging scrutiny of emotional triggers. The art of the lie, logical fallacies, is slippery scope, arguing that an initial action will inevitably lead to extreme consequences. Examples: if we allow same-sex marriage, next people will want to marry their pets or inanimate objects. Why it works? Creates fear about hypothetical future scenarios without requiring evidence. So the purpose to describe the slippery slope fallacy, focusing on fear-based hypotheticals. The key elements include a provocative example, likely includes an image of exaggerated fear significance to help students spot fear-driven arguments lacking evidence. The art of the lie, logical fallacies, others. Other common fallacies include false dilemma, hastily generalization, appeal to authority, and circular reasoning. By studying these patterns, you develop an immune system against manipulative argumentation in political discourse, advertising, and everyday conversations. The purpose to summarize additional fallacies, encouraging study for defense, the key elements to list four fallacies, framing knowledge as protection likely includes a chart of fallacies, as we can see. Significance to broaden awareness of the deceptive patterns, reinforcing critical analysis skills. Thank you so much for watching this episode of this subject, and we are going to continue next episodes as soon as possible. Thank you so much. From London College of International Studies, Dr. Muhammad Alwishi says hi to you. See you again. Tata for now. Assalamu alaikum.